thank you for joining me today, Jaishree, and thank you for being on the Goddess Talks. Um, I am Allison Barbary, and I am an empowerment coach and intuitive guide. And I am here today with Jaishree, who is my personal soul spirit mentor, who has been my mentor for all of this 5 years of a journey that I've been on. I'm so honored to have you. Thank you for being here. Jaishree, tell whoever's watching now or later, in a nutshell, what is it what you do?
Thank you, Allison, you beautiful soul. It's an honor to be here. My name is Jaishree Dow-Spielman. I am the creator of the Soul Culture Yoga School and the Soul Mapping Matrix. I am a spiritual educator and ascension coach. I'm a mom, an author, and a mentor.
Yes, and happy Mother's Day to you.
Happy Mother's Day, gorgeous.
Thank you. So I'll dive right in. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is actually that soul purpose. And so, you know, we all have a purpose for being here on earth. There's a reason we're here in this body at this time. And it's what allows us to be, it's what drives us, what gives us meaning for being here on earth. There's something I know you would call it Dharma, right? Being in your Dharma. Can you explain what that means actually?
Of course. Well, I am a yogi and an aspiring bhakti yogi. So I practice devotion and service. And the Vedas are, you know, the oldest living wisdom on earth. And Dharma is a Sanskrit word that really means purpose, as you say. It's the soul's purpose. So Sanatana Dharma means the eternal function of the soul, and Bhakti Yoga is, you know, a very practical and yet mystical way to bridge us being embodied on this earth with our soul's purpose.
And I had such a wonderful blessing and honor of being one of your yoga students in Soul Culture Yoga School, and learning about Bhakti Yoga and the Bhakti Soul and Dharma from you. And that was such an honor. And all of these things, and I know I've said this before, but all of these things and all of this journey started with you. And my purpose started to come to light when I met you and I met Kalani, and I started to really understand that concept of being in your Dharma. And so for you, what is your soul purpose? Like what is your Dharma, and how do you live in your Dharma, and how does it drive you to do what you do?
It's a big question, and
it is a big question.
We were driving home today from visiting friends in Connecticut, and we were talking about the Soul Culture Yoga School, and we're talking about Soul Mapping Matrix because you probably know we're in between eclipses right now, and it's a very powerful time. My soul purpose is honestly to love, and to unabashedly love fiercely, practice radical authenticity, practice being able to be a mirror to others on their soul journey. And although I would say our Dharma looks different as we go, as we know, you know, we have a body that we're born with, and a subtle body that has impressions mentally and emotionally. We have a family, we have an identity, a culture. All these things are temporary, actually. And then when we awaken, or when I awakened into where the divine met my spirituality and my work in life, my Dharma was revealed. So
what was that? But so you say when you awakened, so it's not like you were born and like, hey, this is my purpose, I know. So what was that like? Like where did that come from, that awareness? How did you figure out, I guess, what your purpose was? Where did that awakening come for you, or come from? How did that happen?
I think we're all awakening all the time, right? I came in very clear, actually. I came in with purpose in the sense that I had drive to share. I was a singer and an actor from babyhood. So my way of serving was to mirror that love, that emotion, that hero's journey and arc through sharing it by poetry or Shakespeare or musicals, definitely musicals, and singing and dancing my way to share that experience. And it did change though, because there was a certain point where that lifestyle was unsustainable. And it wasn't like that was when pain came in, because I was actually born with some karma, some samskars, some experience of physical pain, not just psychological or emotional, but these migraines and this physical genetic disposition. So pain is a great teacher, right? It absolutely is constantly reawakening us to come out of the body identity and into our soul's identity. And hopefully that matches the inside and outside, but it doesn't always match up. So, man, woman goddess, I loved sharing and always will. And I guess that is the purpose, but the way it looks changes. And I found that through really stepping into Vedanta, taking it a little more seriously, and yoga more seriously, which is why I then shared that with you and why I created.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, what's interesting is I remember some of the story that you told me, and like what I know about you is you spent time in Los Angeles, you spent time out in California, and you were living essentially a sort of kind of your purpose in that sense that you were sharing your life in that way. But you I remember you telling me you came back to the Boston area and you got into yoga, and it really before yoga was like, it wasn't that long ago, but it was before yoga was like everybody does yoga. It was like before it was super trendy, I feel like.
Absolutely. I was really
And
lucky. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm hearing, and you're asking beautiful questions, and I'm want to encapsulate that moment, that like aha moment, that dark night of the soul moment. Sometimes it's gradual, and sometimes it's just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like I just had that recently. I bought a house, and I was here for a year, and I've been leading retreats, and certain aspects of life shift and change. But yes, I went to conservatory in New York City, and then I was working in New York, and I was doing many, many shows, always multiple, while making money in other ways. And I was in SAG and equity. And then I went to Los Angeles. And I would say Los Angeles for me was a mecca where various worlds met. And it's sort of like choose your own adventure. We've talked about that. I could have gone just that yogi route, or just that. There's really dark roots, because materialism and money are sort of always part of a social foundation. And while acting was a beautiful calling, it did not answer my questions. It had an endpoint, and it was not satisfying. So I think what you and I actually haven't talked about so much was how I am sort of religiously or spiritually driven. And so I was always really involved in Judaism and studying it and traveling to Israel. I started traveling very young to other countries and just understanding cultures. And so acting was about understanding humanity and psychology and emotions, but it had a point where it wasn't enough. And that's when I had my sort of dark night of the soul and went down, and the veil was very thin. And I just heard yoga saves me, yoga saves me, yoga saves me. So I had been practicing yoga asana since I was 18, but I didn't really step into it until I was 30, and just became a teacher very swiftly and started sharing in that way. And yes, I was sort of an earlier adapter to Western yoga and had amazing teachers, especially Shiva Ray, who's really a pioneer as a woman in the yoga world. But she's following Krishnamacharya, and she's following, like other paths that always were going to lead for me to bhakti, and to
Right.
Vaishnavism specifically.
Right. So, I love that you're talking about the dark night of the soul because I found this quote from Joseph Campbell, who actually you and Kalani introduced me to, and wrote a lot about the dark night of the soul and wrote about that, how it comes up in our lives, it comes up in literature, it comes up in stories, it comes up all the time. And so the quote is, if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there the whole while waiting for you, and the life you ought to be living is the one you are living. So 10 years ago, you wrote a book called Discover Your Bliss.
I did.
You did. Can you share a little bit about where you were when you were writing this, and what gave you the desire and the drive to write this?
I'm very, very lucky. I feel very, very blessed that I was able to share, even though it can, the burden of being an entrepreneur and building businesses and making things work, it can be very exhausting. But the soul's desire is to serve. And I had some awesome people in my life come in. One I just visited, my Raghava Pandit, aka Rob Ellings, who's my brand designer. He's my mentor in regards to many aspects of soulpreneurism and branding and all these things that really I don't have a desire so much to do, but luckily someone else did. And he came in and kind of said, you have to, let's put because I'm a spiritual person, I just want to do the work, but you have to, as you know, layer and layer and layer the structure around how to serve and how to give in a very in a way that's digestible and understandable. So Discover Your Bliss was actually a way for me to offer both my story and my mirroring to so many people who have experienced, like all souls do, the understanding of samskars I spoke to, or pain, addiction, the decay of the subtle body and mentality by living in this crazy ass world and material world. Even if we're good, even if we want to serve, it's just amazing how far it can go. So Discover Your Bliss was really meant to be just an offering that could allow people into my world and thus know who I was taking shelter of and how I was teaching, and give a nice outline for what would become the Soul Culture Yoga School, as well as the Soul Mapping Matrix. But it turned into the most amazing offering, and like thousands of people have read that book and connected to it, and we just brought it out for the 10th anniversary. So I just love it as a tool and a workbook, because I was able to not just write a story, but give a lot of meditations and journaling and some deep, because I've done a lot of deep psychotherapy, so why not give a little bit of loving, nurtured, safe, not re-traumatizing up level. And that up level is what Discover Your Bliss is.
So you wrote it 10 years ago, though. And as we talked about, we're always awakening. We're always reawakening. I think there was a time that we spoke that we were talking about, like, it's just your awareness just grows, and then something else fills that container. So it has to grow a little bit more, and then more knowledge fills the container. And it's an infinitely expanding. There's never a way where it's like, okay, I've learned it all. I've done enough. I've grown enough. I'm all done, because it's going to continue to go on. And depending on whether you believe that, that means being reincarnated until it comes on, or going on to a different, after, leaving this body, you go somewhere and you continue to learn as a soul or a spirit, whatever that means to you. We're continuously learning. So, we may know our soul purpose and our heart and what drives us, and we may know why we're here. But again, you wrote that 10 years ago. When you look back at it now and you're reading it now, what's changed? Has anything changed since you've written that for you?
It's a really profound question. Has anything changed? Because I read it for the first time weeks ago, and I cried. I was like, holy Lord, you know, like to experience it in an encapsulated way. It is the human experience. So I'm not that special for having those experiences and sharing it. I just try to um, bring it into a language that will match the landscape of the soul that I'm connecting to. And so I guess, yes, so much has changed in the landscape of my life, you know, marriage and having a baby and multiple businesses, and then owning Sanctuary, a yoga studio, and closing Sanctuary, going to India. These are parts of the landscape, but the essence of it does not change. Just like the essence, I think, of who we are in many ways, as you say so beautifully, doesn't change. So that is why we need mentors, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I believe in reawakening, to find that essential wisdom, power in nature. Um, and it's interesting that I think sometimes we can reawaken that by manifesting certain aspects of life to like be in our face and say, hey, 10 years ago, this happened. Do you remember that? And I think that the past 2 years gave us that opportunity collectively to also individually go back. So nothing has changed and everything has changed. But
Um, it's, it's, you speak about mentors, and it's so true. I can't imagine anybody going through any part of a spiritual awakening, but also continuing, because you need it. It's almost like going through life without a parent. Like,
yeah,
you start the spiritual awakening, you have to have somebody, or somebody to look to, that's an actual tangible human being who has some prior knowledge and has gone through it themselves,
that's
to
right.
then help you understand, and also to kind of help you understand like what's real, what's not. When you start the process of the journey and the understanding, and you're starting to find your dharma, you're starting to find your soul purpose, you're kind of awakening. It's also very like all the things are really interesting, and like you don't know where to go, or where it's leading, or what to fixate on or focus on. And so having someone there, so I had you and Kalanity at the very beginning, help me to really like hone in on things. And then, you remain my mentor and friend, but then you also gain new mentors and new people that you look to at each stage of that journey, depending on where you are. And so I think that it's so important that you also don't say, oh, I'm all done, I don't need any
No,
more help.
no. And you so beautifully reminded me about the beginner's mind and always coming back to the beginner's mind. And luckily, the Vedas will say if we get too puffed up, Krishna, Radha, whoever you deem the divine to be, will come back and like knock us down. So we will be given those opportunities. I also just heard you say something about levels. And I wrote my second book. Shouldn't bring it up. You might bring it up, but
No,
it's
share all about it.
well, Soul Ascension. I'm writing my third book now. Soul Ascension I wrote in January of 2020, and I got it out in 48 hours because it was a book about the about
Easy.
attempting to reveal the sacred nature of psychic awareness awakening. Because I knew that all of the psychics, as many people do, were going to wake up when that veil came down, which was actually in the form of just so much drama and so much illusion showing up in front of our face that no one would escape it unless they worked very hard and believed that they could escape it. And so there has been a consciousness shift where those who chose to be willfully, you could call it willful ignorance, or you could call it, and it's not one way or another. There's no one choice or one decision. Everyone has their own experience, but there is a way to put the wool over your eyes or cover your eyes and not deal with reality, which is that we don't live with one dimension, and that
Mm.
this 3D world, and we're in Taurus, right? This is all a Taurus energy right now because it's about grounding in earth, embodying on earth and manifesting in real time our dharma, our wishes, our hopes. And that middle realm, the subtle energetic realm, or what someone called the 4D realm, or what, it's the space that cannot be seen by touching and feeling. It is not the earth, water, fire, air. It is the ether and is sound. So many people were waking up to that. And then of course there's talking about deeper spiritual experience. So I wrote Soul Ascension to help people who were awakening and were about to kind of go a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
To realign and get grounded that there is no crazy unless you don't believe in it. That duality exists. And of course, there's so much more higher than duality. So I share that because as that shift was happening, I was moving more into mentorship. And naturally, yoga, which is vital, which is like the nuts and bolts of holding space, of being a healer, of being able to share in an amazing way where we're not in our shadow and our ego, but we're standing up there and loving people and holding physically and emotionally. That's yoga school, right? But the mentorship aspect, which you are so into and you have been called towards and you have evolved in so many ways, is about helping people shift from that, you call it 3D to 4D, you could call it, into understanding that there is more, and that consciousness is always expanding, but the material world is not. Like, this is earth, this is my blood and bones and guts, and then I have a mind which is only just going like this. My intelligence goes deeper, and that's where it goes towards intuition and understanding. And so this is the time of integration, baby, right? This is about taking all that data and information that people can get on the internet now and actually making it real.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this. I've thought about this a lot, and I thought, do I notice it more because now I know about it? Like, do I notice all of this sort of, it's not just spiritual, but like everything, all the things, all of the stuff that you don't necessarily see, I guess, you kind of, the veil lifts. It really does. I feel that that's really what happened, is this veil lifted, and I was like, wow, there's so much I don't know. And I started, it evolved into so many things for me. Like, one of the biggest takeaways I've had is this understanding of interconnectedness of humanity, and the understanding that, all religions and all beliefs and all the systems really are just like pieces of a big picture, and it could all be true, and it could all come together, and it could all be right. And we can all honor that and all live together in a world where we can say that, yeah, like, we just don't know everything, and that's okay. But you're not wrong, and I'm not wrong, and they're not wrong. We're probably just all looking at a little piece of the mirror, right? Or like,
Absolutely. And it's like, what is the thread that keeps the tapestry of us together? It's love, and it's values, and it's core values. And core values, principles, they are our, guiding star. But we really do need a compass and a navigation system. And so, soul mapping is, a lot of people think it might be it can seem very complex, but actually it's really a representation of the internal experience of the big, huge, macro external experience, which is to say the individual experience of awakening as a soul into, the reality of everything, which, if we don't, as you say, come at it from, I am not the creator, I am not the destroyer, and I'm not the maintainer, the big God, but I am the servant of, and I am also in relationship with. And if I'm a soul made part and parcel of the divine, then so are you, and so is everyone. And that means we have inherent principles, values, and even natures that we can relate to each other with no matter the culture, the religion, the country, the language. It is the language of the soul that is eternal, but coming
And the
at that
mapping
little
part of
empty.
it, yeah, and the part you talk about, the soul mapping part of it is, I think eventually all of us on this journey kind of find our niche, our thing, but
Mm,
that doesn't mean that we're closed off to all the other things and that we stop learning all of the other things. It's just that we all find that one thing where we're like, okay, this is where we fit in the puzzle, but you stay open to everything else.
that's
And
consciousness.
yeah,
That's
and
that's
what's but I wanted to say, when I kind of got on a tangent before, shocker, that I would go on a tangent. But I was saying, I don't know if you're talking about this awakening, and I'm curious to hear what you think, because you say like within the last few years, and I really, for me, it's like, like 2017, 2018 is when I sort of started, I guess, waking up and seeing these things and accepting these things, and slowly, with many questions and a lot of pain and a lot of like difficulty, especially at the beginning of like, is this right? Is this a sin? Is this bad? Is this wrong? Going through all of that. But now that I've been going through it, it's like, I feel like I see it everywhere. I feel like everybody I talk to is, not everybody,
yes.
but so many people are understanding it. I find it on the internet, I see it, and I don't know if that's because I'm aware of it and I specifically look for it, or if it's
Yeah.
really true that more people are really coming to understand this. So what do you think about that?
I think it's a both and world. I
Mm.
say that a lot.
Yeah,
There's
you
this
do.
word I do, and
And it's
there's,
true. It's very true.
it's and it's that line we say, the first line in Soul Culture Yoga School, Achincha Beta Abeta Tattva. It's both one and not one, the truth of, but it's more than that. It's, and I'll use less Sanskrit words. It's discernment. It's not, the mind is just like a monkey reaching. I like this, I don't like this, I like this. It's like the animal, and we all have animal bodies in us, but the animal eats, sleeps, mates, and defends. That's all it does. It does not have the capacity or the consciousness to link material life with spiritual life. They are amazing and they are souls and they deserve the best and they are innocent and we must protect them. However, they don't actually embodied now necessarily have that link, that bridge, and we humans do. So the awakening of consciousness and keep expanding, it's so painful, isn't it? Like we keep stretching and nobody really wants to stretch, but stretching means we're learning more, getting more data, and we're embodying it or integrating it. Discernment is how we perceive different values in different humans and in different things or places, time, place, and circumstance, and either like it or don't like it, but can respect it. And so I think everybody who is allowing the space, the discomfort, and we're all like, bing, we're like seeing each other. It's kind of like Pokemon, I guess, which I never played,
Yeah.
but I get it, right?
No, yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And we're
Yeah.
all like, oh yeah. And that is what people call the new earth. And
Mm.
all those people, I'm seeking out those people. And I'm also seeking out the lineage holders. And they are the cultivators of keeping legacy and lineage on earth now before it completely disintegrates. And that's why what you do is so vital. And that's why what we are doing and sharing is so vital. And yes, everyone will find what they need and they will find the data and resources, but they don't always connect. That's why mentorship is so special. It's the
So important.
relationship. It's
It
like
is.
the discernment of the values and the information, but then the chakras awakening, the
Yep.
subtle body being like, oh my God, I remember this and it feels amazing. And it's powerful.
Yeah. And I think we're introduced to our mentors and the people that guide us, it's not accidental. I tell a joke story all the time that I accidentally ended up at Sanctuary. And in some ways I sort of did.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
I was going to a training somewhere else. And
I
it was
love
like
it. I love it.
it was a Siddha healing with Seth Monk,
Mhm.
and I thought it was at this other yoga studio, and I was like, oh, I was wrong. Day of, I walked in. I remember Kalanity talking about you had just given birth to Narayani about 6 weeks prior. And I came back again, and I came back again. And, like literally a few months later, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do yoga school. Actually, no, I was like, Jaishree, I'm not good enough at yoga to do yoga school. And you said, you don't do yoga school to get good at yoga or because you're already good at yoga. You do yoga school because you want to learn about yoga. And
Mhm.
so by that May, I think that was like December or January, because you had given birth to Narayani in December. And then by May, I was in yoga teacher training with you and Kalanity and some other beautiful souls. And I don't think that was accidental, because
Right.
you both opened my mind to so many things, and you both opened my understanding to certain things, and that things that I was afraid to understand and things that I was always taught were not okay.
Mhm.
And that, the idea of duality, I had never understood the idea of a feminine and a masculine divine working together, and that what that means in the God and the goddess. And so what you really sparked in me, and which has sort of become my, I guess, niche or my focus, is really talking about like the goddess, whether it's be the goddess within, the goddess without, the goddess within all of us, embracing the feminine, the divine feminine. And although we must be in balance with the divine masculine, obviously, that, we're also at a time in our world where we've had thousands of years of matriarchy, thousands of years of patriarchy, and now like the patriarchy is a little bit destroying the world with the shadow parts of the patriarchy, that aggression and need for control. And I think the feminine divine has also been a little bit passive in accepting that. And so people are waking up, and passiveness can be a shadow part of the divine feminine as well. And so now we're talking about like the divine feminine rising, and that doesn't necessarily mean rising above to
No,
once again
of
be a
course.
matriarchy.
No.
It means we have to meet the divine masculine so that we could become in balance, which everything is about balance. Every religion, every belief system, yin, yang, every belief system has some core understanding of balance. And so my soul work, and what is important to me is a few things, is really helping other females or people who identify as female, or, feeling that sense of the divine feminine in them, and also helping, males who maybe are a little bit of what that might mean for them, what it
Wow.
means to feel a little bit like, oh, does this
Definitely.
take away my masculinity if I let it be part of who I am? And really talking about, the goddess in terms of all the goddesses and all the things I love and all the statues and all the stuff, but like really talking about like us being a goddess and having that goddess within, and then also embracing and elevating the feminine divine in ourselves and in others. So my question to you would be, how does the divine feminine show up in your work?
Beautiful. So something a little bit controversial or exciting or awesome and true came
Be
up when you were
controversial.
sharing all that, because that's kind of my job, to be the humble bumblebee that comes in and then goes, surprise. Here's a little wisdom from Vedanta about the goddess. And by that I mean, when you shared that there are forms or aspects of the goddess that come in about aggression, and those are actually just forms of energy that are not necessarily male or female on one level, but they are definitely female. Because if you look at the goddess from Veda, like, okay, so you also asked about me. So in Bhakti Yoga, we are honoring the relationship between Radha and Krishna as the most ultimate, gorgeous, beautiful, loving.
I know they're behind you, but for those who may not be aware.
Yeah, bring Radha and Krishna out.
So I just
Radha,
have a
Radha.
little one.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
But
So Radha is always on the left of Krishna, and all of the embodiments of divine Shakti, of which are many, of feminine divinity, are, you know, you could say are emanating from Radha, where all these divine elements of masculine are coming from Krishna. But actually, Krishna is the creator, or the Shaktiman. And that means Radha is the guru and embodiment of all Shaktis. And it is Radha's power over Krishna that is one of the most interesting aspects. But what I wanted to share was these other forms of divine feminine, Kali, Durga, you know, Parvati as Shiva's a wife, and of course Ram and Sita. These are various forms of, if you want to say, core Shaktis, energies, potencies, powers of the divine. In this realm right now, we are in Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga is all about quarrel and confusion. And history is not relative. It exists, but depending on how far and deep we want to go, we'll know more history. So, for example, the Vedas are not made up stories. They are historical experiences, 5,000
one of
years.
the most ancient, I think the most, or one of the most ancient written texts ever on Earth in human history.
In human history. And there are various texts, because we have this big thing, just quickie, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all these different legs, arms, and body of Vedanta. And part of that might, you know, you have the Puranas, which are actually a lot in the Upanishads. You know, you have Bhagavad Gita, which is, you know, the song of God. You have, and then you have all these other books, like we read Chaitanya Charitamrita and Jaiva Dharma, and these various personalities that are emissaries of the divine are coming to share these historical experiences. But Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam go very far back to when Krishna came through and was born. And there are different yugas, or eras of time. And so different emissaries or avatars of God will come at different times, right? That makes sense. Yes. So in this very short historical time, we have had Jesus come, we have had Buddha come, we have had all these various forms or emissaries or avatars come. And so as you expand your consciousness, you also can get shorter and shorter and closer into this time. And in this time, even just in the past 100 to 200 years, we had a surge and shift in social life. So much so that what we call feminism was a movement where, yes, as you know, the divine goddess got pushed down, pushed down, pushed down, and you could call that misogyny, or you could call that patriarchy, but it's not about men. It's just about the coverings that human nature comes in and gets scared or power hungry and wipes out what is actually true, which is divine.
So it's like the energies of what can be associated with the divine masculine, essentially, but
or
the energies of it.
Or the divine feminine. So this idea of violence is not necessary. It can be barbaric. It can be considered to be a manly thing, but it's more about, because women are very powerful. In fact, they're perhaps more powerful, because the reason I was talking about Radha is because she is the power that comes, that
she's
Krishna,
the
who creates. Maybe he creates, but she is the creation and also the power and the various Shaktis. And so she is who he bows to. And there are many religions that will come in and speak to this historical and conceptual idea over and over again in different ways. Hence, we have newer religions and newer, you know, spiritual practices. And so, coming in and saying straight up, the divine feminine is the intuitive power. It is the healing power. It is the collection power. Men can create, but cannot, men cannot necessarily create the same way, but we are not God. We are part and parcel of God, and we are Shaktis of, and we are Jivas embodied, made of the same thing. To not look at divine feminine along with divine masculine is a strange and weird construct. In the past 100 years, men got pushed down so much by the desire for the feminine to come back in that we now have generations of men who are not even aware of their own power as well, which inherently is beautiful and divine, just like the sacred feminine. So my work is to bridge that gap. Kalanity's work is to bridge that gap. And I mean, there's dogma in everything. There is absolute, you know, pain and suffering and rage, as well as, you know, generational patterns and tears in societies. And so we are doing that work to actually bridge the gap. And it is vital. The feminine is rising. And in the next 50 years, it will come back.
And part of the work that you do, in addition to all the things you do, is with Kalani, is working with couples and to bring in that balance. And, you know, I'm not just saying this, but you and Kalani are such a beautiful example of that balance, divine feminine and divine masculine as a couple. Kalani very much embodies, I could see that balance in him. He so honors both parts of that in him in such a beautiful way, but you bring it out in each other as well, and you balance each other so perfectly, and you do that. So, you know, that's something you offer, right? That's something you also offer as a service.
Yes. Yeah. Couples soul mapping mentorship is just as vital as the one-to-one. And so the way I kind of do that is, you know, because soul mapping is a 3-month journey to begin. And, you know, we meet 10 times and I go through all the matrix and, you know, super healing, but also up leveling at the same time and answering any questions and working that way. The couples is similar, but we both come in and we work with that sacred feminine, sacred, you know, divine masculine. But most men are brought by their partners, you know, but it doesn't matter. It is really vital to see in another couple the way the communication works, the way you work through the triggers, the way you work through boundary issues or lack thereof, how you're healing the patterns. And I'm very honored and so happy to be in my relationship and homeschooling and everything with Kalani. He's amazing.
Yes.
But we also have had the hardest years, which led us to up level again ourselves, which kind of goes back to your original topic of, does discover your bliss happen again? Yes, it happens again. Like, we have to have a navigation tool. So we use soul mapping just as much as we share it with our clients.
And I can attest to, like, again, anyone who's watching now, anyone who's watching later, I've literally watched the way you and Kalani communicate, even in like slight disagreement, you know, that it's this really there's this really respectful and it's very, it's amazing to watch the two of you communicate with each other and kind of even work through like a tiny disagreement, but the way that you honor each other in doing it and the energy that both of you have in the way that you do that. You know, I think if couples are looking to work with you, they'd be so blessed to have that, to see that and to mirror, to see that within you both and how that relationship is, because it really is amazing to watch. I've commented on it before. I've said it before, like, I'm just like, wow, they're having the most like interesting argument, but it's not even an argument, but it's like, it's such an advanced argument. Like, I'm like, wow, they're at a whole different level of evolution as a couple, because the way that they're talking is not how most people talk to each other. It just isn't.
Thank you for that reflection.
And so I will say this, and I want to respect your time. I will say, you know, I owe so much to you and Kalani. I always will. You guys, you taught me, as I said, you taught me about all of the things initially. You put me on my path to spiritual awakening. You were my first mentor. I did soul mapping with you. And then again, I got to experience and understand not only, the things about that, being a Gaudiya Vaishnav and the things and understanding your specific belief system and religion, but also understanding how that relates to the other parts of the world. And then, I got to learn yoga in a very beautiful way with you that I don't think most yoga schools have. I just don't think that that's something that exists in the way that you teach yoga. Your Soul Culture Yoga School isn't a run-of-the-mill. It's just so much more. It's so even if someone does it and never ends up teaching yoga, like they're better for having done it because there's so much learned from it. And then you guys also taught me about the things that have become super important to me, which is the balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And what you really taught me about and what you really helped me to see is, what it means to be a goddess. Mm-hmm. And what it means to be empowered. I remember we did, when Sanctuary was open, we did, Shake Your Asana.
Yeah,
and we did this like goddess dancing that was just so beautiful. But you show up in this way in the world that you are just a living, walking goddess. And happy Mother's Day to you too, Blandy. But you are you are a living, walking embodiment of the goddess. You empower anybody who works with you and who knows you. And so you've done that for me. And, I want to thank you for that. And I want to ask you one final question. And I think that would be, what makes you feel empowered? What makes you feel powerful?
Wow. Well, thank you for that mirroring. That was so beautiful. And I'm honored by you and you showing up in the world. What makes me feel powerful is relationship where we are doubling down and growing together and learning and being seen as you just mirrored is such a gift. I wish to feel empowered every day by bridging the possibility that one can be a spiritual expansion of the healing arts or of bhakti yoga or of some service in the world and also serve in relationship to God, and that it is not just one or the other, that even if we're focusing that this time on earth needs a powerful, nuanced voice that will say, actually, I can be born and not be of the world, but be in it in service, and I can grow and I can expand and I can be in pain and I can cry and I can laugh and I can also shake my asana. And I can do that as a worship, right? As a ritual, as a divine act that is biblical, if you will, on every level. So I feel really powerful when I get to connect with amazing people like you and connect with people who are expanding their consciousness. I also feel powerful laughing and dancing and singing. So
and you are, I mean, for people who maybe, you're actually hilarious too. So you always make me laugh every time I'm with you. You're just hilarious. I'll never forget you. Something was happening and you kind of said something to someone and you're like, and I got stung by a wasp today and now so did you.
So did you?
It was like the funniest, like most vulnerable in the moment. You were aggravated, but also hilarious. Like just the way you said it. And so laughing is not hard to do when talking to you. And so Jaishree Dow-Spielman, you are a mentor. You are an author. You are a healer. How can people find you to do soul mapping? How can people find and rediscover your bliss and soul ascension? How can people connect with you? Tell us all the ways.
you can visit my website, which is jaishreeyoga.com. And on jaishreeyoga.com, you can sign up for a free discovery call, which is really awesome. And I'm very happy to meet with people and see where they're at. You can download my books, you can get free resources, but it's all there, jaishreeyoga.com. And
Yeah.
I'm also just really grateful for connecting with you tonight.
And thank you so much for coming on. I know you had a really busy weekend, and I appreciate you making the time. And thank you to everyone who watched with us and will watch later. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Happy Mother's Day, beautiful Allison. Happy
And
Mother's Day to all your friends and community and peeps.
and tears as well, and lots of love. Thank you.
Mwah. Love you. Love you so
Love
much.
you.
Thank you.